No, I just want us to get along, you know? Wouldn't it be nice if everyone just got along? Question mark, raised eyebrows. Actually, I wonder if I can raise only one eyebrow. Hold on, let me try this. No, I'm raising one eyebrow and the other, and my eyebrows, unfortunately, aren't independent, unlike eyelids like this. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, boys and girls. How are we all doing today? Oh, I completely forgot I wasn't supposed to laugh quite that loud. Well, it's too late now. Yes. Regardless, we shall continue our reading of the English Constitution, and we shall do so aloud again, because apparently that is what is demanded of me, and therefore this becomes... Oh, I didn't include this in the title. This should be a bedtime story. Oh well. Anyway, so we shall continue as we did, in that I will continue to read, and then I will also stop and comment and highlight and you know, essentially demonstrate how I would make notes for something like this. Cool? Cool. Let's start. Oh right, I was supposed to read this out loud. The element which excite the most easy reverence will be the theatrical elements, those which appeal to the senses, which claim to be embodiments of the greatest human ideas, which boast in some cases of far more than human origin, that which is mystic in its claims, that which is occult in its mode of action, and that which is brilliant to the eye, that which is seen vividly for a moment and then is seen no more, that which is hidden and unhidden, that which is specious and yet interesting, palpable in its seeming, and yet professing to be more than palpable in its results. This, howsoever its form may change, or however we may define it or describe it, is the sort of thing, the only sort, which yet comes home to the mass of men. So far from the dignified parts of a constitution being necessarily the most useful, they are likely, according to outside presumption, to be the least so, for they are likely to be adjusted to the lowest orders, those likely to care least and judge worst about what is useful. Now, as we were talking about this, I actually wanted to point out one thing, which is, I'm going to come back to this because this is important, but not yet. Mystic in its claim, blah blah blah. And it's this. The whole point of the theatrical, the dignified theatrical, is necessary as a symbol of unity for a people, right? And so, oh, that's the wrong button. And so here I want to point out that in the UK, it takes the form of the monarch. In the US, and this is important, in the US, this takes the form of the office of the president. And therein lies one of those problems that we will discuss, which is the office of the presidency simultaneously has the power of the executive. And that is, I would argue, mildly dangerous, right? Like, in my mind, the theatrical, dignified, should act as the head cheerleader of the country. And this is not to say that we're supposed to put Joe Biden in a little skirt and have him go around in pom-poms, but that it's supposed to be a symbol of unity, something that everyone in the country, regardless of political inclination can rally behind. And when we don't get that, obviously we have problems. So when we don't get that, obviously we have problems, right? And this is my particular understanding of this issue. It's that when the US Constitution was made by the founders, obviously the king still had some amount of influence over policy in Britain. But over the years, the English Constitution evolved in such a way that the monarch became a symbol only. And that was really important for the development of Britain. That's not to say that there is no political divide. Obviously there is. But the Queen, Elizabeth II, God bless her soul, ma'am, and her son not quite so much, but the Queen really, really did her job in providing, and I talk about this every time we talk about this, but the Queen really did provide a dignified way for Britain to shrink its empire in such a way that the people were okay with it, right? Like a royal garden parties, blah blah blah, you know, a Chelsea flower show, you know, like just the fact that she was always there, but never in a way that was truly upsetting. Even after Diana, if we're completely honest, even after Diana, you know, when her esteem was the lowest among the population, she was still a symbol of unity, right? And so comparatively, the US Constitution was made when the king still had some power over everything. But the UK Constitution has drifted far away from it. And in part because the UK Constitution itself is a living document, and therefore it is a living item that continues to iterate and change, whereas the US Constitution is very, very hard to change, right? Because the UK Constitution is adaptable, whereas, and yes, I understand that there are amendments, absolutely, 100%. But how hard were some of these amendments to actually insert, right? And there is no such thing as a UK originalist. Is that what they call themselves? Let me just double check so I don't make myself sound like a fool. Constitution originalist. Yes. Yeah. There is no such thing as a UK originalist, because the point of the Constitution isn't to apply what worked in the 1600s to what works in the 2000s, right? Like, that's silly as hell. The US Constitution is very firm and very and quasi-religious. There is no such thing as a UK originalist. I mean, sure, you could say, the original royalists. you could consider them to be originalists, right? But and so here again is the point, and this is the point that Bagehot made about Queen Victoria. Bagehot said that Queen Victoria would necessarily draw away some of the attention of the uneducated, so that the actual leaders of government were able to deal with the complexity of the modern Now, having said that, obviously Whitehall didn't do such a good job with such things all the time, right? Obviously, there are like all sorts of very interesting and very stupid things happen in Whitehall. But I am of the opinion, and I think regardless of whether you're on the political right or the political left, I think a lot of you will agree with this statement, which is stupid people should be kept out of determining national policy. And that's not to say that they shouldn't vote, right? Remember, there's a very key difference here. Policy, international policy, foreign policy, economic policy, all of these things are very, very difficult and very, very you cannot handle extremist views in policy. Keeping extremist views out of policy is important for a country to continuously develop, right? Because the moment that you add this sort of extremist policies into the modus operandi of a country, you are limiting the ability for the country to adapt to evolving geopolitical situations, right? Like, let's be very clear about this. The quote-unquote West, i.e., like let's say the G7 plus, right? So we're talking about the U.S., Canada, England, U.S., Canada, England, France, Germany, Japan. Which one? Australia? Something along those lines. Like that block, very much mostly Western Europe, U.S., Canada, the Anglosphere, and then plus Japan, is its own block, but the rest of the world doesn't function like that. And so what we've seen over the past decade is that, I should write this down, yeah. The sphere of Western Europe plus Anglo plus Japan as a bloc has been retrenching over the past decade, and the rest of the world has moved on from it, right? Like there's now this call for the battle for the global south, South America, Africa. There's all this talk and all this hand wringing about why African countries don't seem to be supporting supporting the Western sphere against Russia. There is also hand wringing about how the average Indian voter considers NATO partly at fault for things. Like these are issues that are hard to deal with and that require, and yes, I'm deliberately staying away from China for sort of additional reasons, but we'll not talk about that, not today. These are issues that require complex and nuanced policies. Are issues that require complex and nuanced policies. Something that extremism within government makes very difficult, right? And so if I'm completely honest, part of the reason why the British Empire managed to become the British Empire part of the reason why the British Empire managed to become the British Empire is that the people in charge were able to implement policy without they were agile enough. Whitehall during the height of the Victorian was agile enough and had enough resources to pounce on every opportunity they saw, right? Like it's essentially Whitehall, the British system allowed themselves to put themselves into a very serendipitous position where they were able to take advantage of all of the opportunities that were provided. I think that's fairly simple to see. No, again, I continue to advocate that everyone should vote. In fact, those of you who know me know that those of you who know me well know that I consider it a civic duty to vote. Right? Like, if it were up to me, voting would be compulsory. Absolutely. To me, voting is the way to show that you understand and that you love this system. Of course, voting and accepting the results, right? We don't live in a country with no institutions. Our institutions technically work. The reason why they don't work is when people make them not work, and then they complain about them. They complain until the system doesn't work, and then that gives them something to properly complain about. And that's tragic to me. People complain about a system and fight over it until the system breaks, and then they have something to actually complain about. Well, it is true, right? Like, voting and understanding the institutions that support the vote is an essential demonstration of the love for your country. No, let's not say of civic duty, of maturity. Let's put it that way. Oh God. I thought I had purged all of you. Well, some of you are. No, some of you are really unpurgeable, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean that I will allow that kind of talk. So let's be very clear about this, okay? Good. Anyway, let's continue. There is another reason, which in an old constitution like that of England is hardly less important. The most intellectual of men are moved quite as much by the circumstances which they are used to as by their own will. The active, voluntary part of a man is very small, and if it were not economized by a sleepy kind of habit, its results would be null. And so, this is mildly interesting, right? The active, voluntary part of a person is in Muses speak the the actions taken that were not prompted by evolutionary instinct, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. We could not do every day out of our own heads all we have to do. We should accomplish nothing, for all our energy will be frittered away in minor attempts at petty improvement. One man, too, would go off from the known track in one direction and one in another, so that when a crisis came requiring mass combination, no two men would be near enough to act together. It is the dull traditional habit of mankind that guides most men's actions and is the steady frame in which each new artist must set the picture that he paints. And all this traditional part of human nature is ex vitermini, most easily impressed and acted on by that which is handed down. Other things being equal, yesterday's institutions are by far the best for today. They are the most ready, the most influential, the most easily to get obeyed, the most likely to retain reverence, which they alone inherit, and which every other must win. I.e., yesterday's institutions are entrenched enough that changing them would require too much energy, right? And this is something that we don't really think about a lot, because this is, for all intents and purposes, true, right? Like this is why the Constitution in the U.S. is so revered. Right, and in part this is all due to, how do we say this, like if you look within yourself, you will find that you grew up with a certain amount of societal understanding and societal knowledge that was sort of imposed on you by the people that you live around, by school, by friends, etc., by media. And so we have all within us, we have this idea of what we believe society is and what we believe the institutions are, right? What we believe our rights are. And for, let's say, for a lot of Americans, that is this very vague and very how do we say, subconscious ideal of liberty and freedom, even though we don't really understand what liberty and what actual freedom might be, right? Which makes it really easy for people to hijack that idea, right? So, i.e., Americans grow up in a society that imposes a abstract idea of freedom and liberty. But because these ideas are so abstract and so murky, let's not say murky, and so and almost subconscious, it is easy for populists to hijack and link themselves to these ideals and turn and weaponize them. Right? I am all for personal freedom, sort of, as long as I'm almost so personally as muses, I am almost libertarian in that I if what you do is not imposing on, you know, your neighbors or society as a whole, then there's and it's not imposing on another person, right? So say for example, you stay at home and you cook yourself 2 pigs a day and you try to eat 2 pigs a day. You know, theoretically, if you then also choose to not go to the emergency room, then you're fine, right? If you choose to then, you know, deliberately do stupid things to make yourself sick and then waste public money in trying to heal you, then, you know, someone should impose what you're allowed to eat, should control what you're allowed to eat. Because if you're going to use public money, if you're going to spend public money to heal you, then, you know, the public should have an input in what you're supposed to eat, because otherwise you would cost the public more and more money. Let me write this down. E.g., if you eat 2 pigs a day, and don't go to the emergency room when you have health problems, then you're fine. Or yeah, or if you pay out of pocket for your healthcare issues, then you're fine. Then you're fine. Then you're fine. I'm perfectly happy to accept this kind of civil liberty, right? However, if you use public resources to solve problems that you've caused yourself, then the public should have via doctors an input in how you eat, right? I.e., your doctor might say, okay, instead of eating 2 pigs a day, all you're allowed is 3 slices of bacon, right? Like the doctor is not going to tell you to. Doctors don't generally try to ruin your life for no reason, because they have better things to do. Anyway, we have gotten almost completely off topic. Okay, let's move on. If you feel attacked by this, that is not my fault, okay? To be fair, most of you pay for your own healthcare, so none of you should really feel attacked by this. If you pay for your own healthcare and your doctor says, maybe you shouldn't eat 2 pigs a day, you can go ahead and ignore them. That's that. Again, right? Like that to me is perfectly, if not good for yourself, at least it's reasonable from the perspective of liberty. If you're using your own money to make up for mistakes that you've made against yourself, and you choose to ignore people who want to help you, fine. I can't do anything about that. I won't do anything about that because there is no reason to, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes, well, such is life. Moving on. We must so else the crew as new creations happen. Blah blah blah. A brief description of the characteristic merit of the English Constitution is that its dignified parts are very complicated and somewhat imposing, very old and rather venerable, while its efficient parts, at least when in great and critical action, is decidedly simple and rather modern. We have made, or rather stumbled upon, a constitution which, though full of every species of incidental defect, though of the worst workmanship in all out-of-the-way matters of any constitution in the world, yet has 2 capital merits. It contains a simple, efficient part which, on occasion and when wanted, can work very simply and easily, and better than any instrument of government that has yet been tried, and it contains likewise historical, complex, august, theatrical parts which it has inherited from a long past, which take the multitude, which guide by an insensible but an omnipotent influence the associations of its subjects. Right? So essentially, the government in Westminster is able to work really efficiently when it needs to. Otherwise, it's prone to infighting, and that's normal. But it also has another part which unifies the country via the crown, right? In this case, it was Queen Victoria. I did want to point out something that's completely unrelated. Which is this. Emperor. I can't say Emperor. Which is just like fascinating, isn't it? Like, how much of an effect did these people have on on just like Western civilization, right? Let's keep in mind July, the months of July and August are named after dot dot dot, right? Like do I even need to go on? And it's just like, this is just fascinating. Anyway. Well, that's exactly it, right? That the word august, which takes on such sort of regal meaning, is named after fucking Octavian. Oh, I did that wrong. That's fine. Yes, that was the like, it's just ridiculous to me, right? Like between Julius and Octavian, they have really done some very interesting things. Anyway, its essence is strong with the strength of modern simplicity. Its exterior is august with the Gothic grandeur of a more imposing age. Its simple essence may, mutatis mutandis, be transplanted to many very various countries, but its august outside, what most men think it is narrowly confined to nations with an analogous history and similar political materials. And this is rather interesting, right? Because even today, people's perception of Britain does not include the Yobs and the council estates and Birmingham. Or the rest of the Midlands, or the Midlands, British Leyland, you know, all that good stuff. And that's very interesting when we talk to, you know, people in Asia, or even a lot of Americans will look at Britain and think, oh, you know, the Queen, will think nobility, class, you know, but they never remember that the toffs have had to like fucking put themselves on display, put their castles on display and turn them into living museums, right? Like, nobody remembers that the toffs had to put their castles to turn their castles into living museums to survive. It's just fantastic. Anyway, we are done for today. Thank you very much for watching. In conclusion, actually, we should buy a castle. Oh, that would be a good idea. Yeah. When we expand the private club to Europe, we should buy some castles. We really should, actually. I'm fairly certain we can even afford one. It might be out of the way. Like, we'll do something in Scotland, perhaps. Because we'll do something in Scotland because that's just nicer, right? We'll fly into Edinburgh and then take, you know, a helicopter out or something. And yeah, let's think about that. Anyway, we are done for today. Thank you very much for watching. In conclusion, please download Firefox, please download Chrome, and I shall see all of you possibly tomorrow.